On behalf of the Raza Foundation, we welcome you this evening, a rather cold evening, a very polluted evening. In spite of that, you have so kindly come to this function. We are grateful and we welcome you. Raza Foundation has been, in a manner of speaking, engaged with Habib Tanvir for a long time. We instituted a Habib Tanvir Memorial Lecture, which is an annual lecture which is held in the India Habitat Center. And in December, I think 4th or 6th December, Makarand Sathe, a Marathi playwright, would be delivering this year's Habib Tanvir Memorial Lecture. Last year in September, 1st and 2nd September, we organized a 2-day seminar in Raipur when Habib actually turned 100. And some of friends here have been there. Then we organized a day-long seminar here in the India International Center in December. And this is the 3rd event. So may I first request Neeraj, Malick, Anjum, Katyal, Sudhanva, Deshpande and Raina to kindly occupy the seats. The occasion is the publication of a Centennial Reappraisal of Habib Tanvir and his legacy in theatre. One cannot but start this on a sad note. It was theatre critic Javed Malick, who is the co-editor and who in the meantime passed away, spoke to me about this book. The book was still being planned. He wanted me also to contribute an essay which I could not. And I had offered that once the book is ready, we will organize it now. So it was being organized posthumously for him in a manner of speaking. The book is published by Seagull, edited by Anjum, Katyal and Javed Malick. Habib Tanvir, during his time, was a major presence, not only in the world of theatre, but also in the broader world of culture. He was many things at one go. He is one of the very few, perhaps the only one that I can easily recall, who did as many as 3 Sanskrit classics. Mritya Gati, Mudra Rakshas and third one? Uttaranjali, yes. Now, he was the only one, and apart from that, he did Ibsen and he did Shakespeare, he did Bertolt Brecht, etc. But what is interesting is that he is not remembered for these productions, although they were good and effective. He is remembered for his major productions, which are remembered today, are the ones which had no play script. And there was hardly any writer. Charan Das Chor, of course, had a writer. In a sense, it was a folk tale, but he turned and there was a serious hiatus between the collector of the tale and producer of the play, Charan Das Chor. His first major production, which made him appear as a major presence, was Agra Bazaar. It had no script in the sense that the play has no story. And it was a 2.5 hour long, or whatever the length, and you enjoy the play without having a story. So a non-story in one sense. And the third was the Tiki Gadi, which was at Bahadur Kalali was also and more naam Damad and Gaon ka naam Sasurat. These plays were more created out of process with the participation of the actors. And this is an incredibly unusual phenomenon. The normal modern theatre has a very central, magisterial presence of the director, and the actors are supposed to act as directed. That's why it's called director. But in case of Habib Tanvir, there was no such presence and of a magisterial director, at least in these plays. And he had earlier been with IPTA. But there is an article in this which points out that how all IPTA actors were middle class. They came from middle class. Very ideologically inspired, etc., but they were all middle class. Habib Tanvir created a theatre which is people's theatre in a sense, that they were people who nobody would recognize otherwise on the street as actors. They were not professionally trained either. If you remember, he had gone to RADA and only completed 1 year and left. And he saw the not that he did not acknowledge the importance of training, but he saw that the kind of training which is being imparted was no use to him. He seemed to have remembered this, and therefore he ultimately created a theatre which was in Chhattisgarh. Now Chhattisgarhi is dialect of Hindi, and Hindi has, sadly or gladly, as many as 46 dialects. So it's only one of them. But he made it into a universal theatre language. So his contribution, in fact, when Chhattisgarh was created, carved out, I wrote a piece saying that the one person who deserved to be the first governor of Chhattisgarh is Habib Tanvir. Because it is Habib Tanvir who gave Chhattisgarh its cultural identity. It gave its language, the dialect, a status which was international. So here was a people's theatre. His theatre was total theatre. I mean, everything that you can think of is there. Music, dance, etc. मैं तो एक बार कहता था कि ये भागता दौड़ता रंगमंच है, इसमें अभिनेता इधर से उधर भागते रहते। चरणदास चोर में तो हबीब तनवीर खुद भागते हैं, जब पुलिस के सिपाही का रोल करते हैं तो वो भाग रहा है, गोविंद राम हुए एक्टिंग। एंड it was also in that sense a classical theatre. He went to two elements of Indian classical theatre. One, there was no constraints of time and space. So you turn around. I have seen in Ramlila in my boyhood, a Kishkinda Parvat Neeraj makes a round, Kishkinda Parvat, and nobody sort of was nobody demanded कि भाई किशकिंदा कहाँ है. This element of traditional classical theatre, putting trust in the imagination of the viewer, was one of the elements that came in this theatre. So, if you remember all these plays, there are hardly any, what do you call it? Decor or whatever, etc. The second, he was classical because he is the only one who did so many classics. I mean, if you look at the list of the classics that he, whether of India or of elsewhere, this list is absolutely mind-boggling. And third, it was a theatre which was ideologically very rooted, strong, but very entertaining. It was not the theatre in which you sit. It disturbed you because it asked questions. It was an interrogative theatre, and yet it was very entertaining in interrogation. So बात में वो सवाल और बड़े सवाल, I mean these existential questions, political questions, etc. So here was a person whom we should remember with much gratitude. Also learn from him how, and his was also a poor theatre. You know, this term became very popular at one time. Really poor people were doing his theatre. And he himself was poor compared to, his other compatriots or whatever. He hardly any resources. So it was poor theatre, it was total theatre, it is classical theatre, and it is modern theatre. All combined in one person's theatrical work. It was a long journey, but he did it with great courage, imagination, sensitivity. And his is a political theatre. It's not whether it is doing Mitti Ki Gadi. If you remember, all of a sudden at the end, there is a julus with a red flag going around, etc. So, Habib Tanvir, I had seen and I still can't find it where it is. आगरा बाजार का एक प्रदर्शन मैंने देखा था जिसमें शुरू में गणेश की वंदना है और उसमें ये है वो है, फिर वो कहता है कि महिमा उसकी भी रहे जिसका नाम नज़ीर. Now I had a suspicion that Nazir never wrote this. It was Habib who wrote it in the idiom of Nazir. क्योंकि हमने बहुत नज़ीर ग्रंथावली खोजी, उसमें मिले ही नहीं ससुरा. बाकी तो सब मिल गए, तो हैं सब जाने पहचाने, लेकिन वो नहीं मिला. तो मैं उसको बदल के मैंने, जब वो 80 बरस के हुए थे तो भोपाल में एक आयोजन हुआ जिसमें रीना गांधी, तो वो था कि महिमा उसकी रहेगी जिसका नाम हबीब. That was the kind of and I must say that on a personal note, there was a time when we were under deep distress. Bharat Bhavan, we have been shifted from Bharat Bhavan, everybody has resigned, including Habib Tanvir, who was one of the founding trustees of Bharat Bhavan. And he wrote an article in Times of India. And he, having said whatever, he defended me personally, that how his experience of me as a bureaucrat was. And I still remember with much gratitude, because that was the time when we were being thrown out and things like that. So Habib stood by individuals whom he trusted and by causes which were social and political in his time. We have 4 eminent people. Since you smile, I withdraw the word eminent. However, that does not necessarily cause any deficit of eminence in them. We have M.K. Raina, who is a well-known theatre person, who has worked with Habib Tanvir, and in some ways his theatre maybe can be said to have been in the same stream, if you like. If there is a Habib stream, then Raina also belongs to it somewhat eminently. Then we have Sudhanva Deshpande, who is both a theatre person and a filmmaker and a publisher and many things, and he has been keeping in these times, particularly when being on the left is already a indictment of a certain kind. He keeps the flag, howsoever red, blowing. Neeraj Malick has been life companion of Javed Malick, whom sadly missed this evening, and she has also been writing after Javed left, keeping the stream as it is flowing. And then we have Anjum Katyal, who many years ago used to edit a very fine theatre journal and organize a 2-day or 3-day theatre event in Calcutta, remembering Habib Tanvir, and she is also co-editor of this. So we'll start with Neeraj Malick, then Sudhanva Deshpande, then Raina, and finally Anjum Katyal. And now the book has to be released. So maybe ऐसी पोथियां एक ज़माने में होती थी, तो हम लोगों ने उसी का
Good evening, everybody. I would like to begin by acknowledging a deep debt to our friend Anjum Katyal, without whom this book would not have seen the light of day. The project of a book-length critical appraisal of Habib Tanvir's work in his centenary year had begun to occupy Javed's imagination in late 2021. With that in view, he started work on the volume, drawing up a plan and writing to possible contributors. Unfortunately, in July 22, he fell seriously ill and had to be hospitalized for several weeks. His recovery was long and slow, and at best partial, and he despaired over never being able to bring his dream project to fruition. It was at this time that he approached Anjum, who has had a long association with Habib Tanvir and a considerable body of critical work on his theatre. She readily agreed, but on condition that Javed co-edits the work with her, to which, after the initial hesitation, he agreed. Seagull was an obvious choice for the publication, and Naveen too readily agreed. I am grateful to both of them for providing the hope and comfort to Javed and making his task easier. We all know the story of Tanvir's long and hard struggle to develop the kind of theatre he had envisioned. He had felt it in his bones, but he could not clearly define its contours. It was a vision which he chased throughout his stay in England, in his European tours, in his experiments in Delhi, on his return. He went about it with a single-minded determination and commitment. As I said, we all know about this difficult period in his life. He has himself talked about it, though without talking about the economic and physical hardships that he and his family suffered in the process. I have been a witness to some of these hardships, as he would be absent for several weeks from home while Monica juggled jobs with caring for Nagin with the help of neighbors to keep themselves afloat, as well as the various physical ailments Habib came back with after living in the villages. It bears repeating because it is this quality of persistence and tenacity and the confidence and courage to believe in and follow one's goal that defined not only his person but his theatre. Of course, once he found his form and started to stage his plays, he was an instant success. It was something no one had ever seen before. It offered a unique experience and its effect was mesmerizing. He started being written about even though there was still no full understanding of what he was doing. Much of it was descriptive and anecdotal. However, over the years, a considerable amount of commentary and criticism built up in newspapers, journals, essays, books. He himself wrote and talked at length about his work, his method, his vision. His theatre too continued. He had many times thought of closing down Naya Theatre as he grew older and more frail, but theatre was also his lifeline. Naya Theatre continued to function despite the difficulties. In fact, even from his deathbed, he protested, "Doctor, I don't want to die. There's so much work I have to do." But cessation came with death. Now, 15 years after his passing, and in his birth centenary year, there's a need not only to collect all his work, and it is a huge opus, writings, plays, long and short, lectures, interviews, poetry, but also to build a sustained critical engagement with his work. This volume of essays is one of such attempts. Hopefully, it will be the beginning of such initiatives. Habib Tanvir, thank you. Habib Tanvir, one of the topmost theatre practitioners of modern India, surely deserves that. Nearly all the contributors to the volume are theatre scholars and practitioners who have also known and worked closely with Tanvir. As a result, they bring an immediacy and an in-depth understanding of his theatre and his work practice. An interesting aspect of the book is the essays which talk about the collaborative work done by theatre persons outside India. So, collaborative work with Habib Tanvir and the Chhattisgarhi artists. They provide detailed accounts of the whole process of their joint work, from discussing and developing their basic ideas to their execution, resulting in performances which were enthusiastically received by local audience. The artistic exchange and the ease and comfort with which these exercises were conducted become a telling comment on the creative strength and vitality of Naya Theatre. The songs and music of Naya Theatre plays have been an essential component of their work. They are not used as mere ornamental add-ons, but are intricately woven into the fabric of the play. The time and energy that Tanvir and his actors spent on developing, choosing, experimenting, and rehearsing these is itself indicative of the importance they assign to them. Unfortunately, this is an area that has not received much attention. The interview with Nagin Tanvir is an effort to bridge that gap. This is an area that needs more sustained and considered study, though who can do this, since all the old actors who participated in the exercise are no longer alive. so it's a moot question. For it was in close collaboration with his actors, who were also singers and musicians, that Tanvir constructed and designed the music for the songs that he mostly wrote himself. Collaboration, I feel, is the key word to understand how this theatre worked. The notion of a modern, cosmopolitan, sophisticated figure of a director who schools and molds illiterate, unsophisticated village actors who were chosen only for their artistic skill and their repertoire of folk forms does not help. This image does not work to understand what this theatre actually was. Tanvir himself recognized this when he rejected this binary and called it two sets of sophistications. The villagers may be illiterate, but they possessed a strong cultural identity. Their rites, rituals, ways of living and being were part of their cultural expression, which Tanvir learnt to recognize and respect. This came through a long association of living together and mutually interacting with each other. We must remember that he refused to live in upper middle class accommodations, which could not afford a place for the village actors. He used the Asiad village flat assigned to him to house some of his urban actors, while he himself opted to live in a one-room LIG house with similar flats for the actors. Similarly, he refused posts like the directorship of National School of Drama because they would not allow his actors to remain with him. Sorry. This consciousness of two strongly rooted but different cultures came to him quite early, when he was trying to arrive at his form. Though he doesn't articulate it as clearly as he did later, he is baffled by their not responding to his directorial style of blocking and requiring his actors to speak in Hindi. But he has no difficulty in discarding his own notion and admitting it as a mistake. Can one say that over the years, while this mutual understanding and respect gave the village actors the confidence and strength to navigate the most difficult and unfamiliar themes and situations, it gave Tanvir a kind of humility and deep understanding of folk culture that together become the real strength of Naya Theatre. In this volume, MK refers to the process of democratic discussion and workshops that went into the making of the plays dealing with complex ideas, or in dealing with Western or Sanskrit classics. Anjum brings up the incident of Fajita in London to highlight Tanvir's inclusiveness. Democratic, inclusive, collaborative, all these characterize Habib Tanvir and the Chhattisgarh village artist Naya Theatre.
Well, it is true that we are missing many people today. I'm missing Javed most of all, who first asked me to write for this volume. I miss Habib Saab. I miss Monica Di. I miss many of the actors that I knew very well, most of whom have now passed. and who together made this incredible theatre happen. When Javed asked me to write for this volume, I was faced with a little bit of a problem. And the problem was that I had already written quite a lot on Habib Sahib and his theatre. And I guessed that the others who would be asked to write for this volume would be better and would be more articulate than I would be in writing about larger issues such as his politics, where he drew his inspirations from, etc., etc. And the main contours of his life and his creativity were kind of known, and I knew that they would be rehearsed in the volume itself by other people. I had also written about our work with Habib Sahib, at least a part of our work. By our work, I mean the work that Jannati Manch had done with Habib Sahib. Habib Sahib worked with us for the first time in 1988 when Safdar Hashmi and he worked together to write a play called Mote Aam Ka Satyagrah, based on a short story by Munshi Premchand called Satyagrah, and many of us acted in that play. And I was witness to how the play was written and how it was directed, and I acted in it and so on. So I had already written about that experience in my book on Safdar called Halla Bol. So I was really faced with a problem. What the hell do I write on? And there was no question of saying no, because firstly Javed had asked, and there was no way I could say no to Javed for anything. And secondly, it was a book on Habib Sahib, and so there was no question of saying no. So I kind of scratched my head and I said, यार लिखे तो क्या लिखें जो कि कोई और नहीं लिखने वाला है. तो हमने कहा भैया हम एक्टर हैं और हमने जो एक्सपीरियंस किया है उनके साथ एज एन एक्टर, वो एक एक्सपीरियंस है जिसके बारे में हम लिख सकते हैं, जो शायद बाकी जो कंट्रीब्यूटर्स होंगे उनमें से ज़्यादातर लोग वो नहीं लिख पाएंगे. इसलिए नहीं लिख पाएंगे क्योंकि उनका वो अनुभव नहीं है. They haven't experienced Habib Tanvir as a director working with actors. And that turned out to be, for me personally, a very fruitful exercise in thinking about Habib Sahib anew, because this is an experience that I had had as an actor myself. I had also had the experience of sitting in on his rehearsals with Naya Theatre. Fortunately, and these are accidents of whatever history you can say or geography or whatever, for many years when they stayed in Birla, my father who used to teach in JNU, so therefore I stayed in JNU. And so, like the Birla house was on the way up to JNU. And so I would finish our rehearsal in Jannati Manch and land up there after our rehearsal and spend several hours at night and then walk back at 2 o'clock in the morning to get back to JNU, and or on whatever, I was Birla basically, कुछ काम नहीं था करने का, स्टूडेंट था, तो दिन में भी हम पहुंच जाते थे वगैरह. तो कई घंटे, I can't tell you how many hours I have spent just sitting in on rehearsals and doing nothing but just sitting. And there's a way in which through osmosis you kind of just see and observe, and at that time not a lot of it makes sense, but later on when you think about it and try to join the dots, some of these connections start making sense. And in particular, it started making sense to me when I started directing plays myself. Now, obviously, Habib Tanvir is Habib Tanvir and I am me. So, there's no question of, any kind of comparison, but certainly there are some things that all directors do, which is talk to actors. And I have been spoken to as an actor by other directors, and I have had much occasion to speak to actors as a director myself. And one of the things that started striking me later when I started directing myself was that Habib Sahib was one of the the only director I think I know, who would speak to an actor depending on who the actor was, not just in terms of who the person was, but also where this actor was from. So in other words, the way in which he would explain scenes or actions or motivations to a rural actor and the way he would speak to an urban actor would be fundamentally different, even though there were some things that were very common. I've written about all of this. So some of the things that I've written about you will have to read yourself, for which there's a bookstore, book stall outside. So, well, not, but you know, it's a Seagull book. So please do go and buy the book. It's an amazing volume. I mean, truly. I'm not saying this because I'm speaking here. I'm not saying this because I have written in it, but certainly I read the book with a great deal of interest and learnt a lot. And I thought that I knew something about Habib Tanvir and his theatre, but I learnt a hell of a lot from this volume, so therefore it's highly recommended. So do please get a copy. Also there are other books. Raina's book is there, Anjum's other book is there on Sabda, and so on. So please spend some time at the bookstall as you walk out. But when I started writing about it and thinking about what Habib Tanvir did with actors, one of the things that struck me is that while he would speak differently to rural and urban actors, there was one thing that was very common, and one thing that he did and one thing that he did not do. What did he do with everything? He would talk about what we were doing. Now this, obviously you would say, you know, what else is a director supposed to talk to actors about? Obviously actors have to act, and so directors will talk about what are you doing. But there's a way in which you talk about what you're doing. And Habib Tanvir, at least in my experience, and I watched him closely for 21 years, I acted under his direction 3 times in 3 different productions. And I watched him direct his own actors numerous times. And I watched him also direct other actors who were not from Janam or from his own company several times. I never ever heard him speak about what are you feeling as an actor. What is the emotion here? He would only talk about actions. And this is remarkable. It is truly remarkable because it is very difficult not to talk about feelings when you're talking about acting. But he would do that, and he would do that across the board to actors who were rural, urban, lettered, unlettered, highly educated, not educated, whatever it was. He would only talk about actions. And he had this eagle eye and this ability to sort of make minor adjustments in what an actor was doing and convey the meaning and the emotion differently. And there's an absolutely incredible incident that I remembered as I was writing this, which I've written about, and I won't go into the details of that, but which was a great lesson for me. Because what it did, you know, Ashokji spoke about how his theatre was full of humor, right? And it was full of joy, and many of us who experienced that theatre as spectators, we know it, you know, you laughed when Habib Sahib did a play. And in rehearsal, I know this, when we did Moteram Ka Satyagrah for the first time, that scene with Chameli Jan and the magistrate coming there and so on, it was hilarious doing rehearsals at that time, because Safdar and Mala and me and Deepak Tiwari, all of us had a ball doing it. But one of the things that I learned how to articulate was that there is laughter and there is laughter. And this is a distinction, that there are many different kinds of laughter. And laughter plays different types of, laughter has different, you know, purposes at different places. Is a lesson that one instinctively kind of knew, but I was able to articulate it when I watched Habib Sahib work with a particular actor in a particular play. The play was just Lahore ne vekhya wo janmya hi nahi. ये नाटक उन्होंने 1990 में पहली बार किया था, श्रीराम सेंटर रेपेट्री के साथ किया था पहले, उसके बाद में फिर अपनी कंपनी के साथ किया था. The story is of an old Hindu woman who stays behind in Lahore after partition, and this Indian Muslim family that goes there, they are allotted this house and they find this woman staying there. और उसमें एक शायर है, उसका किरदार है, और वो शायर जो है वो रात रात भर घूमता रहता है, और वो उसकी और एक चाय वाले की दोस्ती है उस शायर की. और वो एक सीन है जहाँ पर कि वो जाता है और जो चाय वाला रात को सो रहा है, रात को 3-4 बजे का टाइम है, और ये जा कर के उसको जगाता है जो शायर है, और जगाने पे वो इसलिए कि नींद से अचानक से हड़बड़ा के वो जगता है, तो वो चाय वाला जो है वो एक गाली देना शुरू करता है, और काफ़ी मोटी सी गाली देना शुरू करता है वो, एंड देन ही सडनली रियलाइजेज दैट ओ दिस इज द पोएट, you know, who he has a lot of respect for and so on, and he catches himself. और इस पे obviously, you know, it's a funny moment, and the actors did it, and we laughed and so on. Habib sir was like, no, इसको दोबारा करो, and I'm not exaggerating, 2 घंटा लगाया उन्होंने, और अंत में जाकर के वो बेचारा एक्टर जो कि उसके चाय वाले का रोल कर रहा था, और जो लगे, सर हमने सब करके देख लिया सर, आप क्या चाहते हैं सर? हताश होकर उसने मतलब रोते हुए लगभग, सर आप क्या चाहते हैं, क्या करें हम, मतलब सब कुछ तो करके देख लिया। तो हबीब साहब भाई रखा, खड़े हुए चल के गए, एंड ही डिड इट, एंड द मोमेंट ही डिड इट आई जस्ट न्यू दिस वाज फनियर, बट आई ऑल्सो न्यू दैट ही वाज सेइंग समथिंग दैट वाज अ लिटिल बिट डिफरेंट from what was being said by, you know, previously. And what was different was the social attitude of laughter. कि जो शायर है वो भी जब जगता है और हड़बड़ा के गाली देता है, ये गाली देना शुरू करता है, फिर अचानक से रोकता है अपने आप को, उस मोमेंट पे जैसे ऑडियंस हंसती है वैसे शायर को भी हंसी आती है, लेकिन शायर की हंसी का एटीट्यूड क्या है, ये सवाल है। और शायर को अगर इस बात का एहसास हो कि मैं शायर हूँ, मैं बहुत ज़हीन हूँ, मैं पढ़ा लिखा हूँ, मैं मिडिल क्लास हूँ, और ये तो बेचारा गरीब है, और इससे क्या उम्मीद की जा सकती, ये तो इसी तरह की भाषा इस्तेमाल करेगा, ये एटीट्यूड कहीं पर भी अगर आपके दिमाग में है तो वो रिफ्लेक्ट करेगा, and that means something different from the delight of somebody saying something and, you know, catching themselves, जिसमें कि अगर शायर को इस बात का एहसास न हो कि मैं यहाँ हूँ और वो यहाँ है, इस बात का अगर उसे एहसास न हो तो फिर वो हंसी जो निकलती है वो अलग है, ये राजनीतिक हंसी है, दिस इज पॉलिटिक्स। और ये एटीट्यूड अगर आपका है कि मुझ में फंडामेंटली, मुझ में और उस चाय वाले में कोई अंतर नहीं है, वो भी इंसान है, मैं भी इंसान हूँ, वो चाय बनाता है, मैं शायरी करता हूँ, यही फ़र्क है और कोई फ़र्क नहीं, फंडामेंटली वी आर इक्वल। ये एटीट्यूड अगर है, हाउ डज दैट एटीट्यूड शो इटसेल्फ इन योर बॉडी इज़ द क्वेश्चन। और इसको बिना इंटेलेक्चुअलाइज किए, बिना उस एक्टर को पूरी थियोरी समझा के, देखो मार्क्सवाद ये कहता है, ब्रेक ने ये कहा था, ये सब कुछ किए बगैर केवल शरीर के एटीट्यूड के जरिए आप कैसे इस सोशल और पॉलिटिकल एटीट्यूड को एक्सप्रेस करते हैं। दिस इज समथिंग दैट आई सॉ हबीब साहब डू, एंड अगेन एज आई सेड आई हैव रिटन अबाउट दिस, बट बेसिकली वॉचिंग हबीब साहब्स एक्टर्स, हिज ओन एक्टर्स, मतलब नया थिएटर के जो एक्टर्स थे, उनको देख करके पहली बार मुझे मतलब one understood not intellectually but one understood affectively, one understood in the body what it meant when Brecht spoke about alienation. Alienation जब एक्टिंग में आप लेकर आते हैं, क्या चीज़ हो, एक्टिंग में कैसे लाते हैं, स्क्रिप्ट में तो समझ में आता है, गाना डाल दो, ये कर दो, वो कर दो, यह निकाल ले आओ, you know, those kind of things you understand. एक्टिंग में कैसे लेकर आते हैं, how do you demonstrate a part rather than play a role, right? These are some of the things that I learned watching Habib Saab at work and watching his actors at work. So I'm deeply grateful to Javed and to Habib Saab, of course, but I'm deeply grateful to Javed for inviting me to write in this volume, because it made me reflect on things that I had experienced but had never articulated. Thank you very much.
दोस्तों, पहले तो ये सेंटेनरी जो आज काफ़ी महीनों से चल रही है,
मज़ा इसका ये है कि ये लोग जो मना रहे हैं यहाँ कलकत्ते में और भी मनाए जाएंगे, ये थिएटर वाले और हबीब साहब के आशिक मना रहे हैं। क्योंकि मैं छोटी सी कहानी बताऊंगा, मुझे इस बात का अफसोस है लेकिन खुशी है कि वो संगीत नाटक अकेडमी हमारी बहुत बड़ी संस्था है और उनको रत्न अवार्ड दिया गया है। अकेडमी रत्न है वो, एक अवार्ड तो होता है 3 नाटक, रत्न अवार्ड, पद्म विभूषण दिया गया और बहुत सारे अवार्ड दिए गए हैं, कालिदास अवार्ड दिए गए। नॉर्मल ये होता है किसी भी देश में आप क्या करेंगे, ऐसे आइकन को आप सेलिब्रेट करेंगे सारे देश में। वो नहीं हुआ, कोशिश हुई थोड़ी सी मैंने की, मैं संस्था के लोगों से मिला, तो उन्होंने जो कहानी कही तो समझ आया कि भाई ताला बंद है ऐसे लोगों का, ऐसे काम का और ऐसे किसी भी सेलिब्रेशन का, क्योंकि सिग्नल है कि किसी तरह से उस टेप पर जो लिखा है उसका इमल्शन उतार। ये हम लोग को बहुत ज़रूरी समझना है, इसलिए मुझे इस किताब का महत्व तो इसलिए ज़्यादा लगता है। और जावेद को मैं जब उनका फ़ोन आया था तो मैंने कहा क्या जावेद करा, मैं थोड़ी लिखता हूँ यार, मैं ड्रामा करता हूँ। तो नहीं इंसिस्ट कि तुम्हें लिखना है, बहानेबाजी नहीं चलेगी, तुम कितना टाइम लोगे। मैं कहा यार मेरा साल हुआ, ले लो साल, और तुम लिखोगे। 2-3 बार मैं लिखा, हमने शुरू किया, मैं बहाने करता, लिखा नहीं था। बट फैक्ट रिमेन्स टू कीप इट एज अ परमानेंट वॉल्यूम देयर, बिकॉज I went to the academy, there are a lot of recordings of Habib Sahab, but they are in terrible condition. I wanted some of them कहीं पर हम उसका ये करेंगे, स्क्रीनिंग करेंगे. It's not possible. Normally there should have been a documentary on him, and a very big documentary. नहीं है. तो ऐसे हालात में जब थिएटर आप करते हैं, हबीब साहब एक गजब की एग्जाम्पल है, वो तो ग्रीक ट्रेजेडी वाली एग्जाम्पल है कि उनकी ज़िंदगी को जब मैं देखता हूँ, मैंने लिखा ये रोलर कोस्टर थिएटर थे, उसमें इतनी ऊंचाइयाँ थी और एकदम फिर खड़े खड़े से नीचे था वहाँ। कोई ऐसा प्रोडक्ट, हम कहते हैं कि उन्होंने ये किया, चरणदास चोर किया, संस्कृत ड्रामा किया, लेकिन इस बीच आप नहीं समझ सकते हैं कि वो अच्छा याद ही नहीं रखा गया। हाँ, कि उनको इंग्लिश प्ले किसी के लिए करना पड़ा, बच्चों के लिए प्ले करना पड़ता है, यहाँ कुछ करना पड़ता है, बिकॉज नेशन डज नॉट सपोर्ट इट, नोबडी सपोर्ट्स इट, सो ही हैज सपोर्टेड हिमसेल्फ। जब तक होते तब तक नया थिएटर था, जब तक नया थिएटर था दाम तो उनका खत्म हो गया। इस वक्त वो बेचारे भी खत्म ही हो गए, लास्ट वो रवि शंकर वो भी गुजर गया। तो इसलिए इस किताब का महत्व मेरे लिए ये है कि यंगर जनरेशन जो हम कभी पढ़ाने जाते हैं वो पूछते हैं क्या पढ़ें। देश में थिएटर पे किताबें हैं ही नहीं, फिल्मों पे भी नहीं, हिंदी में तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं है किताब। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि इसका हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन भी जल्दी होना चाहिए। ये कहते हैं, मुझे अब याद आता है सन 70 से मेरा फोकस हबीब साहब पे गया है। एक्चुअली मैं NSD का स्टूडेंट था, तो हम लोग ने जस्मा ऑर्डर एक डायलॉग थोड़ा था उन दिनों, NSD से ही शुरू, और मैंने भी उसमें थोड़ी शैतानी अपनी की थी। मेरी टीचर थी शांता गांधी, वो संस्कृत ड्रामा हमको पढ़ाती थी, और संस्कृत ड्रामा में वो थिएटर, ट्रेडिशनल थिएटर, फोक थिएटर की बात होती, तो वो कुछ डेमोन्स्ट्रेट करती थी उसमें, शकुंतला फिर ऐसी आएगी है, मेरे पता नहीं क्या शर्त है। मैं कहा मैडम आपको कैसे पता ऐसे आएगी, आर यू श्योर? तो आई गॉट येलिंग, मतलब ज़बरदस्त लैड, हर बार बेवकूफियाँ करते हो वगैरह। बट आई हैड अ पॉइंट, 2 पॉइंट तब चल रहे थे। थिएटर जो हो रहा था वो पाश्चात्य वेस्टर्न स्टाइल के 3 एक्ट प्रोडक्शन, इवन मोहन राकेश राइट, आधे अधूरे वगैरह वगैरह, लेकिन डायलॉग हमने स्कूल से शुरू किया, लेकिन कुछ कुछ एकेडमी में भी, कुछ सरगर्मी में भी ट्रेडिशनल फोक रास्ता ढूंढ रहे थे। मेरे लिए ये था भाई मैं वहाँ अगर देश के बाहर जाऊँगा, मैं यहाँ से ले जाऊँगा आधे अधूरे, वो कहेंगे तो इब्सन है यार, स्टेनबर्ग का कोड आता है, क्या है डायलॉग मिलते हैं उसमें काफ़ी सारे। तो वेयर इज इंडियन थिएटर, द वे यू सी चाइनीज थिएटर, यू सी जापानीज थिएटर, यू सी वेस्ट ग्रीक थिएटर। तो ये तब कि हमारा थिएटर क्या होगा, उस वक्त गजब का ये मामला होकर फिल्मों में भी ये फॉर्चुनेट है, इंडियन सिनेमा के सिनेमा, पेंटिंग में भी ऐसा हुआ। सो एवरीबडी स्टार्टेड थिंकिंग अबाउट अ विलेज फर्स्ट टाइम. अरे हमारी जो कुछ खजाने में थोड़ी सी फटी पुरानी चौनियाँ हैं, सड़ी हुई है, वो वहाँ है. तो Habib had already started this path. He had started going. But believe me, we didn't care. मैं भी उनकी एक पहली रिहर्सल हुई, 10 बजे रात को रिहर्सल करते थे. अरे हम भूखे मरे, जवान लड़के क्या करेंगे, थोड़ा सा डब्बे से अपना खाना खाया, तुम लोग जाओ कहीं खाओ. मैंने कहा यार ये किस चीज़ है. But then धीरे धीरे उन्होंने जब अपना रास्ता लिया, मुझे लगता है शहर ही छोड़ दिया उन्होंने. और ये मैं देख रहा हूँ कि आप देखिए काफ़ी लोगों को शहर छोड़ना पड़ रहा है. हमने भी काफ़ी शहर छोड़ा, हम भी गाँव में काम करते हैं क्योंकि वहाँ है. तो हबीब साहब की एक कोटेशन है, दे में बी इकोनॉमिकली पुअर बट इमेंसली कल्चरली रिच. और उनसे आप दूसरी चीज़ जो सीखते हैं ट्रेडिशनल वालों से, वो आप सीखते हैं कि वो आप कहते हैं अरे ट्रेडिशनल है, ट्रेडिशनल नहीं होता, वो माफ़ कीजिएगा, वो बदलता रहता है. दे एक्सपेरिमेंट ऑन देयर ओन, पॉलिटिकली एंड सोशली वो चेंजेस लाते रहते हैं. उस हबीब का कहना है कि स्टैग्नेंट पूल नहीं है, सड़ा हुआ पानी बनेगा फिर अगर स्टैग्नेंट रहेगा. तो फ्रेश स्ट्रीम ऑफ वाटर इज कमिंग टू इट एंड एग्जिट भी रखो सो दैट आप देखोगे ये ग्रो कैसे करेगा. दैट आई लर्न फ्रॉम हिज चरणदास, जो डेफिनेटली मिट्टी की गाड़ी डेफिनेटली. बट व्हाट वाज अमेजिंग फॉर मी, जो सुधनवा ने भी बात की, I used to always go to watch his actors. They were something different. वैसे बात करेंगे तो छत्तीसगढ़ी में बात करेंगे तो आपको लगेगा अरे गंवार है, बात नहीं कर पाते. But if you knew them little bit, sat with them, discourse will change. And it happens with most of folk actors. The moment you reach their level and start talking to them, you see the intellect. You see the experimentation, you see the rejection, you understand the politics, the local politics, layers and layers कैसे निकालते हैं वो. और वो हबीब साहब ने शुरू किया था. मैं इससे पहले के चश्मा उड़ने प्ले किया था, उसमें हमने बवाई के थ्रू थोड़ा देखा था, बट दैट वाज नॉट गेटिंग इनटू द डाइविंग डीप इनटू द पूल एंड टचिंग द सॉइल. तो हबीब साहब का ये, लेकिन फिर हबीब साहब को सिर्फ डायरेक्टर नहीं थे, ये समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है. वो खतरनाक स्ट्रीट फाइटर थे. 2-3 एग्जाम्पल्स मैं आपको बताऊंगा. एक एग्जाम्पल तो मुझे लगता है जब 90s में शुरू हुआ, मुसलमान कलाकार, मैं साफ बात करता हूँ, मैं तो पाके नहीं करता, पकड़ो इसको हुसैन को, कर लो उसको जरिए, इस बहाने उस बहाने. हबीब साहब पर भी हाथ पड़ा है, हबीब साहब पर भी अटैक होने लगे, उनकी परफॉर्मेंसेस पर अटैक लगे, बट ही डिड नॉट गिव अप. वो करते रहे. वो एक में तुम भी थे वहाँ. वो दैट स्ट्रीट फाइट. इनफैक्ट हुसैन साहब ने एक बार कभी कहा ये हबीब कैसे बचता है. आई डोंट, उन्होंने कहा था कि दूसरा, जब मेरा तो वो उनका एक्टर सफदर हाशमी का मर्डर हुआ, हम लोग डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन लेके गए होम मिनिस्टर के घर के बाहर, एंड पुलिस स्टार्टेड पुशिंग अस. हम तो जवान थे, हम तो बेटे हबीब साहब पीछे रहे. He came out right in the front, हटो तुम, and yelled at the officer. He yelled at it like, I mean, you know, क्या कहूँगा मैं, कोई स्टूडेंट जैसे फाइटर, यंग. एंड देन मनोहर सिंह joined, then we joined, कर रहा है कुछ. केरल की मैं क्या होता, वो बड़ा ऑफिसर था, उसको ये माना पड़ा कि अच्छा आप दीजिए रेजोल्यूशन में, मैं होम मिनिस्टर को दूंगा वगैरह. एंड यू सी ये मेटल ऐसे नहीं आता कि आप स्ट्रीट फाइट भी करते हैं, हाईली इंटेलेक्चुअल भी बनेंगे, और एक दिन सड़क पे यूरोप में बैठ के एक अल्जेरियन आदमी से मिलते हैं, वो कहता है उसे मुझे पेन अपना दे दो. दोनों फक्कड़, किसी के पास पैसे नहीं. मैं तो पेन नहीं दूंगा मैं, तो उसे कहते मैं तुम्हें गाना सुनाऊंगा, मैं गाना दूंगा तुमको. तो हबीब साहब ने छत्तीसगढ़ी गाना गाया, उसने अल्जेरियन गाना गाया. उस गाने को वापस जब यहाँ आए, उन्होंने उसकी एक धुन बनाई किसी प्ले में. कहने का मतलब कि वो लेयर डाउन, लेयर्स एंड लेयर्स एंड लेयर्स ऑफ स्ट्रेंथ एंड इंटेलेक्ट वाज देयर. ब्रेक पड़ा, छोड़ दिया. वो सही कहा, एलिनेशन समझटिकली क्या समझाएंगे, दिस मीन्स दिस, प्रैक्टिकली कैसे करोगे उसे. ही वॉज द ब्रिलियंट एग्जाम्पल ऑफ डिस्कवरिंग मॉडर्निटी seeds of modernity in the traditional way of doing theatre. That was. दूसरा जो मुझे उनका लगा कि स्ट्रीट फाइटिंग में आपको ये पता नहीं होना चाहिए, होगा पता आपको, जब पहली बार हुकूमत जनता दल की आई कि उनके घर से उनको निकाला गया, रात के 12 बजे सामान फेंका गया बाहर, ही वॉज ऑन द स्ट्रीट एंड घर नहीं था उनके पास, और उसके लिए बाद में वो बेड सराय जो कह रहे हैं वो घर नहीं था, इतना कमरा था बस। When I went there, किताब बीच में पार्टीशन जैसा है, बीच में थोड़ा सा है, उधर बैठ गया। It's a 4th fly employees quarter जहाँ बोले, और उसी के बाहर एक गली है, गली में लैंप बल्ब तो लगे हैं और उधर रिहर्सल हो रहा है, शानदार शो रिहर्सल हो रहा है। मैं रात के बहुत देर तक बैठा रहा, पर दिल्ली में दोस्त वाले वेकअप कॉल्स पर भैया ये है असलियत, थिएटर करना है तो दिस इज योर हॉकी, इवन ही इज डाउन एंड आउट बट एट स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ हिज टैलेंट ही विल सेटल यू ऑन व्हेन ही कम्स ऑन द स्टेज। ये मुझे बहुत अद्भुत लगा उनका कि ये उसका एक उदाहरण, एक सैड स्टोरी मैंने लिखा भी उसमें, मैं उन शब्द उनका नया प्ले देखने के उसका ये होना था, ओपनिंग था, देख रहे हैं, हम बैठ गए ऑडिटोरियम में, मैं यूँ देखा पूछते ना जब ड्रामा नहीं शुरू करता, तो मोनिका जी बैठी है ऑडिटोरियम में, चौथे 5वें रूम में बैठी है, मैं कहीं तो बैक स्टेज देखती है, चक्कर क्या है, ऋषि हियर एंड इट्स द ओपनिंग नाइट, तो बैठे रहे मैं सफदर को मोनिका जी यहाँ बैठी है, प्ले चल रहा है, I looked once and just I looked her wiping her tears, and it continued till the play is over. And we got very disturbed. And we went, and after the play, first we had to meet her. And she was still wiping it. She says, you know this bastard. I remember the Habib. Today he is telling the truth. आज से सच बोल रहा है। What did we get from theatre? हमारे पास घर भी नहीं है, मेरी शादी भी नहीं हुई, and she was completely, I don't know what was that, but even after that, Habib does theatre. Does not only do theatre the kind we know, he goes into social movements, has worked with BGBS, भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति के साथ काम किया, और उसी एक वजह वो भी था कि वो छत्तीसगढ़ वहाँ पे उनके चेयरमैन बन के वहाँ गए, वहाँ पर जो प्ले, वो जो आपने कहा ना इम्प्रोवाइज प्ले, सड़क से 20 मिनट प्ले से, मतलब क्या प्ले है वो, ऑन द स्पूफ ऑन द एंटायर डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट ऑफ द कंट्री। वो आदिवासी कहते हैं कि भैया हमें नहीं चाहिए तुम्हारी सड़क, तो वहाँ वो भी उनके भी वकील बैठते हैं कि कहते हैं तुम तो यहाँ से चोरी करते हो, and really demolishes the whole idea of that, and it's 20 minutes improvised with the actors. You see, that was, आजकल हम सभी कहते collaboration work, we do collaborative work in this, we do collaborative work. This man has been with us 60 years, nothing but collaborative work, but never wrote, I am with collaboration. आजकल ये बड़ा word चलता है, West में भी है, everybody talks to directors, but that is the only science which will make anything creative in theatre. It's not a poetry writing, not a collaborative poetry writing. Theatre can only be done, and it is only possible if you want any kind of a brilliant performance and your actors are with you. And one thing you should remember, the relationship between his actors and him was not something. चरण भी छूते थे, but there is no fight. There is no fight. गाली गलौज, किसी को भूत चढ़ता था, कभी किसी को कुछ चढ़ता था. I mean, only person like Habib could really. I mean, you need what? Not steel nerves, some different nerves. The beautiful part of it, one story. French embassy में reception था, तो छत्तीसगढ़ी सारे आदमी तो होते पहन के, बाकी जेंटलमैन हैं सारे, diplomats are there, everybody there. तो अभी आए थे, हाँ कर लो, कोई उसके बोला ना कोई किने, आया, so they go straight on the table, drink their little wines and start drinking, and relax. एक दो तीन having great fun. And I thought हबीब को कोई फिक्र नहीं है, because अगर अलकाज होती वो हम पर नजर होती, अगर ये क्या he was on board. एक तरह सा सरूर में आ गया, बोला ना बेचारा, हाँ भाई उसको देख लो जरा, ठीक है, हाँ ठीक है, giving that confidence to them that you are my actors, no problem, it is French. Yet they have invited you, you are his guests, enjoy yourself, but at the same time had the courage, had the talent, had the vision of making them actors of international standard. Their plays were welcomed, celebrated at Edinburgh, he went all over the world. Peter Brook's jaw fell, was one of the great directors, and he packed them immediately. The Edinburgh Festival went on. So that, giving that recognition to the tradition, giving that tradition to the what you call the classical texts, and through these actors, and through their medium, through their style, through their interpretation, and through their improvisation and anything, and getting on to the best of the world theatre and presenting them there. I've tried to write that kind of thing. Please, again, read the book.
So it falls to me to come in as the last speaker here. As the editor of one of the editors of the book, and as somebody who has been a long time admirer of Habib Saab's work, and fascination with the many complexities and layers and ambiguities of Habib Saab's work, his philosophy, his whole approach to creativity and the arts. I think that whatever you heard today, each one of the speakers has been able to bring alive through personal experience what kind of richness, let's say, was interwoven as a tapestry. I mean, here's a person who is an accomplished poet, he is a shayer, he sings beautifully, he performs in musharas. Here is a person who does theatre in the most classical languages, Sanskrit and the classic languages of our civilization and our country. At the same time, a man who is fascinated with how the grassroots level influences language. There was this wonderful story he tells about how the common coolie on the platform in a railway station was trying to explain. Somebody was saying, refrigeration card, put it in the refrigeration card. And he turns out, he's acha, tabaksa. So Habib says that he got it. It's exactly that. It's Khanda and it's Baksa, and that's what, that's all that's important about it. Instead of a long, winding name for it. So he went right to, was able to understand that everything that we see as so-called classical evidence has actually come from roots which are local and folk, and the folk is a troublesome category, but you use it as a predator right now. So this is somebody like that. Somebody goes to Radha, who goes and understands straight away that being told to straight, my God, this is not going to happen. Yeah. So he leaves. And he had to fight to leave because he was on support, he was on a scholarship. And he finally got, and the director of Radha looked at him and said, you are daring to come here and criticize that we have allowed you in. And now you're saying that this has nothing, you have nothing to learn from here, you want to leave. And he finally got him allowed to do that. But if somebody who's seen, and then he travels Europe to see the theatres and everywhere. He arrives in Berlin just after Brecht died, when Berliner ensemble is at its peak with the original actors there. And he sees that theatre and understands what it is. And yet, where does he come back and where does he look himself? It's right in his background. He grew up in Chhattisgarh, grew up sitting up at night, listening, seeing the nacha, listening to the music. And that's what when he realized that all this world travel has just made him understand that if he wants to do meaningful theatre, that's where it's going to be. So I'm just trying to point out to you that he was a man of many years and decades. For me, the most important thing about it, and the reason why I felt that the Centennial volume was so important, is because when we think of a direction for our country to move in culturally, we are looking at a country which is deeply riven from between urban and rural. Nobody understands the realities of the other side. And if you want to move forward in the arts, in anything, in politics, in social development, in economic development, you need to be able to find a viable, non-sentimental, non-nostalgic way forward. That takes both the realities into account. Not one is not more important than the other. And that's what Habib Tanvir when he talks about culture, echoing other great writers like Mahashukar. And it says very clearly, until you go and understand and stay with the people, you will not know how to do it. Just because they don't speak. They understood that it's not better or worse, it's different and both have something to talk. So I appreciate the fact that he made a complete pioneering path, forged a path in which people from the Chhattisgarhi language, the Chhattisgarhi accent, all his innate abilities, the training that they got from their traditional nacha, all the training that he was able to give them, it could have come together and created the theatre. Everybody recognized it as the theatre. When you sat and watched that theatre, you laughed your head off, or you were Indian as urban people, not because you were feeling exotic and think the Masha thing, but because it was actually theatre that would work on an urban stage, on an international stage, where people didn't know the language at all, but understood it because of the way. So to me, that's the most important thing about the visa, that he was actually positing way forward for us all. And I feel that with a book like this, one understands that people who are better qualified, like advantage partners, who are actually doing it, they will be able to build a richer body of this kind of work that doesn't top down and one way, but it's actually thank you very much, sir. And I think wonderful. You're really good at hard selling. All of us. Short of stopping you at the door and forcing you to buy it.
We put it upon.
इनको याद करना तो बात बड़ी.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot, all of you, and the four speakers. And as you move out, pick up a copy, pay the small amount that is levied, and feel happy that you have a worthwhile book to read. Thank you.